Hello and welcome to SFDC Sessions. We're so glad you could join us. My name is Elisa Carroll and I'm editor-in-chief of Henry Magazine. Well, today is September 1st and it's the week when so many San Francisco interior designers would be typically headed to Paris for Maison et Objet. Circumstances sadly preventing that this year, we thought we would try and bring a little bit of Paris to you. So we're thrilled to welcome two very special guests today, Elliott Barnes and Jèrôme Benisty. And they're going to walk us not only through their new collections, but through the storied and rich history of French decorative arts. To briefly introduce our guests, Elliott Barnes is an architect, interior designer, and the founder of EB Interiors, his Paris-based firm that designs restaurants, hotels, and private residences all around the globe, from Paris to Vienna, Marrakesh to Tokyo. Prior to launching his firm, Elliott was the director of the iconic André Putman studio for many years. And he's just launched his own beautiful collection of lighting through De Lille, available through Needler Fauchère here in San Francisco. We're also thrilled to welcome Jèrôme Benisty, the global sales director of Char Paris. La Maison Char is a century-old French house known for its exquisite bronze work, its masterful craftsmanship, and its collaborations with iconic 20th and 21st century designers. La Maison Char is available through De Sousa Hughes here at the San Francisco Design Center. As always, our many thanks to our guests, to you for joining us, and to the SFDC and Rhonda Harada for providing us with this platform for education and for the exploration of the wide world of design. So good morning and welcome to SFDC Sessions. It's so lovely to have both of you joining us. I'd love to start with a little bit of background for the San Francisco audience about both of the houses that you are working with. So La Maison Char and De Lille are century-old houses founded and run by French families. And I wondered if you wouldn't mind just kind of briefly taking us through their stories. Jérôme, would you mind starting us off?
We celebrated our 112th anniversary this year. Meaning we were born in 1908. The Eiffel Tower was only 8 years old at the time. And Charles' story began with Ernest Charles, one of the Charles family members, who bought a bronze workshop and starting making grand style fixtures. And then throughout the years, the baton was passed to new members of the Charles family. Each had their different inspiration, different style, different training. Some were sculptors, some were architects, and they each brought different sources of inspiration. So what was really at the heart of the Charles history was, of course, the love of craftsmanship, the love also, of course, of beautiful things, and the love of creation. And so this is the heritage that we're very lucky today to carry.
It's extraordinary. And I understand you also have incredibly robust historical archives as well.
Yes, as I was saying, through 112 years of creation and all of those very inspired Charles family members, but also thanks to collaborations most recently, we have been able to gather in our archives now close to 2,000 different models of wall sconces, table lamps, floor lamps, chandeliers, even sculptures that we are very happy to put at the disposal of today our clients, end users, but also very much interior designers such as Elliott.
And Elliott, obviously you are the principal and founder of your own firm, Elliott Barnes Architect, but you collaborated with De Lille, this French house, to design a collection. Would you just take us a little bit through their history, if you didn't mind?
So De Lille, the Maison de Lille was founded in 1890 by Henri de Lille, which might be the current president's great-great-grandfather. And they created bronze lighting, and they're bronziers d'art, and they were really, that was their specialty. But they also did works in furniture, and they worked a lot with crystal de roche, which I guess is rock crystal, doing chandeliers and then tables and that sort of design. And the current president is Jean Delisle, who took over, I believe, in 2009, 2010, after his father ran the company for, I don't know, a good 30 years. And now Jean is taking the firm perhaps even into a more contemporary direction, working more and more with current architects and designers to, again, write a new page in the history of this house.
Yes. It's a really exciting new chapter, I think, for both of the houses to have both of these incredible historical legacies, but then to be able to bring that tradition of artisanship and craftsmanship to bear on contemporary designs and really develop their stories. Speaking of collaboration, Elliott, would you mind sharing how you first began to work with Delisle? I believe, so you have a beautiful new collection called Poinciana that's available at Needler for Share. And I believe it started with your Architectural Digest project at La Monnaie.
Right. Well, I knew about Delisle from many, many years ago when I first arrived in Paris, because their showroom was basically down the street from where I was living, and also from where I was working with a cart back, which was André Putman's firm back in 1987, 88. And I had this chance to design a salon at the Monnaie de Paris, and I was working on in the Salon de Jean Barin, and I was developing a project that was really about the tools and materials that engravers used, because Jean Barin was the first engraver of the Monnaie de Paris, and so it's a very important job. So he would stamp and engrave all of the pieces of money for the King of France. And so as a sort of tribute to the space I was in and a tribute to him, I decided to use the materials and the forms from his trade to make this stand, this sort of showroom, the small room that we were doing for AD in 2017. And I had a question about how to do a light fixture, and I wanted to sort of sculpt this, the handle of an engraving tool. And I thought the only way to do this was out of alabaster. I knew that Maison de Lille did alabaster, so I called Jean up and I said, look, would you mind accompanying me on this project to do alabaster in a different way, a larger piece, because the initial globe was rather large. And instead of using bronze, really we'll cover everything in leather. And he said, well, we're not really leather people. So I said, well, we'll get over that. We'll work through that. If you can do the structure and the lighting and the bronze pieces, let's see if we can do it. So he said, sure. So we did that first large suspension fixture called Poinciana. And the name Poinciana comes from the poinçon, which is the actual tool that you make to stamp money. And Poinciana is also a reference to a very famous jazz song that I like very much. So this is kind of dual reference going on there.
Oh, how lovely. Because I did a great deal of Googling to look for etymologies of that word and could only find a tree. So thank you for
right. So it comes from a tree, but Ahmad Jamal, who's a fabulous
pianist,
he made it very famous this year. So his real signature song is Poinciana.
Lovely, lovely. And of course, we'll come back to this, but you are a huge jazz aficionado and musician yourself. So I love how all of those things dovetail into the collection. And Jérôme, obviously over the years, Maison Charles has collaborated with so many extraordinary designers, from Olivier Putman and Raphaël Naveau to a recent collaboration with Studio Parisien. And I wondered if you would share a little bit about your work with that great new firm.
Absolutely. First of all, it's very interesting to see how Charles and Delisle, those historic maisons, at some point have associated their craftsmanship, their historical know-how, with new visions, with new inspirations of interior designers such as Elliott, but also object designers, contemporary artists, and even in the case of Charles, fashion designers, with collaborations with Paco Rabanne or Jean-Jacques de Castelbajac, meaning that, inspiration is everywhere. And what's really fascinating about these cases is that at some point, the craftsmanship, the know-how can be at the service of anyone, of any idea, of any vision to make it come to life. And so this is really what Michael Wagner, when he bought the company from the Charles family in 2001, he was the first non-Charles family member to own and operate the company. That's really the vision that he brought, the same way as this vision was brought to Delisle, meaning that at some point we need to evolve. We need to keep our heritage alive, keep those rare and historical craftsmanships alive, but shift in the way we approach creation. And this is typically what we are doing today with Studio Parisien, a young duet of upcoming interior designers, but also object designers. More and more interior designers want to have their own objects in their projects, their own lighting, their own furniture. And this is really what we are offering at Charles and at Delisle. And at some point, when the meeting of the minds is so strong, then those collaborations become deeper, and that's when we incorporate these designs in our collections and we start editing them. So with Studio Parisien, it all started with a beautiful wall sconce, and quite spectacular. It's a 6 feet high wall sconce called Fragments. Very graphic, very geometric, very thin, very pure, made of brass only. Whereas, traditionally we are bronzier d'art. What we do is art bronze. So the metal that is at the heart of everything we do is bronze, and all of the sculptural elements are made of bronze. However, we associate to bronze brass for elements that are either structural or more geometric. And with this collaboration with Studio Parisien, we have worked only with brass associated with alabaster. We, of course, need to bring in other know-hows, other crafts, other skills, and other materials from outside of our workshop. And that's when we collaborate with other workshops that also have the label that we are very proud to carry, which is the EPV label, meaning Entreprise du Patrimoine Vivant, literally a company of the living heritage. And so back to Studio Parisien, when you look at a contemporary piece like the Fragment, you don't see this complex craftsmanship, all the painstaking steps that are behind a piece that looks simple, but actually simple is complex. And so the skills that come into play, and that have come into play since the 17th century for most of them, 17th century, the Palace of Versailles, and those amazing commissions by our kings that really made these skills become more and more recognized in France. So these skills are the chiseling, the turning, and the mounting. I won't go into too much detail, but what's beautiful about these skills is that, of course, they are historical and also rare. But what's great is that they're also embraced by younger generations of craftsmen. So today we have young designers such as Studio Parisien, young craftsmen who all come from the same school, the École Boulle, and that keep this tradition alive and allow also young interior designers to express their art in a new way, but always with the same skill and the love of tradition and of craftsmanship.
There's something interesting because I know the Maison Charles, and I of course visited their studio, and I know the studio of Delisle very, very well, almost like the back of my hand. And what's really interesting is, as Jérôme said, these are younger craftsmen working with younger designers. What's really interesting is that the tools that they use are historically the same tools that have been used for 100 years, right? So there is this sort of continuity in how Maison Delisle and how the Maison Charles will execute when they're doing bronze, or when they're sculpting, or when they're doing ciselure, which is a type of engraving or maybe some repoussage. And I've seen in both houses the younger generation of craftsmen on these machines that are, well, older than all of us sitting here at this table, right? And by far. So I think it's very interesting that in France, because Delille is also an EPV house like Maison Charles, we're able to conserve the heart of artisanship, which has to do with the tools, and we're teaching the younger generations how to use these tools to then move forward with language provided by the younger designers.
That is so incredibly moving. I'm so inspired by that, and that there's such a, I think at one point there was this turn, right, in design when you had a next generation come in that is still so passionate about craft and the history of craft, craftsmanship and artisanship, and that so applies to you, Elliott, because one of the things I think makes your work so rich is your consciousness of context. For example, when you designed your space at La Monnaie, you shared that you drew on the history, of its architect and those who had graced it, like Jean Varin. And of course, you shared that mindfulness has come from your training in architecture and urbanism.
Yeah, it started really at Cornell, which was Cornell University in New York, which was a conceptualist school when I was there in the late 70s, early 80s. And it has to do with really seeking inspiration at the source of the site, letting the site speak to you, whether it's an architectural site or an interior site. There's really not a real difference. And it's looking at the details that are present and thinking about, and then when you have a sort of vision and the knowledge of what's happening around the different artisans, you can then start to make different bridges back to and back and forth between what's happening at a place and someone who can manufacture something. Now there is a shift, and I'm not really sure exactly when the shift happened clearly, but it's obviously more evolutionary. And it used to be that as a designer, you would come into a shop and say, well, I'd like to have this, please, and could you make it a little bit larger for this project? And you would choose from a catalog. And now, as Jérôme says, you come with an idea, like I came and saw Jean Lead, I said, look, this is the idea, this is your know-how, let's do this together. And so by bringing these inspiration from a story, which is the Jean Varin story, the know-how of a house like Delille, or for example, with the house of Maison Charles, you can then start to really go into different territories.
And you mentioned the word story, Elliott, which is something I also associate with you, because I feel as though you really have a sense of narrative and symbolism in what you do. You said that, quote, we make objects to communicate things.
We do. We make objects to communicate things. We make drawings to inform. And I'm very interested in the language of design and vocabulary. So in a lot of projects, I will work on things and by telling a story, develop a little vocabulary, which then gets transformed into form. It could be a motif. It could be, for example, with Poinciana, this sort of thing was inspired by the handle of a poisson. But it's about being able to establish a language for each project. And that language is specific to that project and gives it a certain meaning with report to its context.
Right.
And then when you start to go on from there and you start to distribute it around the world, like we were distributing with Nive Forcher, then those pieces carry within that story. They become kind of ambassadors for the project further down the line. So
beautiful. It's so inspiring to see the ways, right, that you are then sort of written into the history of that tradition. And it's a mutual growth, right? You're able to contribute to it. It is contributing to your development. It's a beautiful sort of mutualism. So Jérôme, one of the things that's so exciting is obviously your house's sort of bridging ancient craft with modern technology that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities for the designers that you work with. Could you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. As Elliott was mentioning, was very interesting today is that we have young craftsmen using ancient tools, but what they're also bringing to the table and at the service of interior designers is the mastering of, I'd say, 21st century tools for creating. And by that I mean 3D. I mean, today all of the projects that we work on throughout the world, they're all presented to their clients, the end users, through 3D renderings, 3D environments, 3D objects, to give them a perspective that is as accurate as possible as to what they can expect from that project. And collaboration, being part of a very wide ecosystem is also something that is remarkable nowadays.
I love the fact that you use the term ecosystem, because I think we all do feel so very interrelated and mutually supportive in the design field. And Elliott, you had spoken about, this real explosion of artisanship in contemporary France that draws on, the natural world as well. Would you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Sure. I think, I'm not really sure what the source is. What I see in designers that I meet and even artisans that I meet in the training that they go through is that there's a huge concern about the after product and what happens. If you make something, what do you do with what remains from that product? And designers thinking in a very sort of forward manner, a very ecological manner, will say, what the remains of something can be something too. And so what we do is we come back and we challenge the artisans like, the Maison de Lille or the Maison Charles to say, look, guys, what's over there in the corner that might be something that you would discard. In fact, that we can give that a certain value, and we can take that and work with that in a different way. We might have to call on another artisan, another trade to help us out with doing, as Jérôme said, a leather or something in stone or something, I don't know, painting or whatever. But we start to associate different materials and different techniques. I think it's also because we're in a fusion society, and the influence is now, it's no longer vertical, it's very horizontal. And thanks to the internet, we have a very wide vision of what's happening immediately in different parts of the world. And then that spokes our imagination and inspiration to sort of bring things together, and the different tendencies happening. There's a friend of mine who's a designer artist in himself, Samuel Tomatis, who works a lot with seaweed, which is kind of almost an ecological catastrophe in certain parts of Brittany. There's so much seaweed produced because of the climate change. It's all related, right? So we have these problems, these ecological problems, and the designers say, we have to solve these problems, right? Because the designer solves problems, and then he takes it and treats it in an aesthetic way, and then calls another house to say, how are we going to form this? And so all of a sudden, by looking at ways to address certain issues that normally we would just say we take it and we discard it, this idea of sustainability, of conservation, about moving forward in an ecological way, then really allows us to open up the sort of artisanship world and bring things together. And people, all of a sudden they are making vases out of algae becomes like another artisan trade. And that probably didn't exist. That clearly did not exist even 5 years ago, right? But because we're in this mode of really conserving what we have, because we understand how precious this whole and delicate this whole world is.
And the beauty of that is too, I hope that you're seeing this as well, that there seems to be a confluence in general in all of the arts and in our cultural moment, our visual moment, of a yearning for that. You used so aptly the term biophilia, right? This yearning to be reconnected with our original environment of nature. And you're right, we're seeing it in literature and film. Robert McFarlane has written so many beautiful books, from the New Underland to the Wild Places. It seems like there's this confluence that I hope we can find some forward movement in. Not hope, it's happening. But so on that note, I know you are both very busy today, and I wondered if we might close by asking you if you wouldn't mind sharing what your current projects are, Elliott. What are you working on right now that you're very excited and inspired by?
Well, right now we're working on a hotel of 22 rooms in the 8th arrondissement, and we start construction in a couple, 3 months, and we'll open sometime in the second semester, the second quarter of 2021. That's going to be a very fun project, which will take influences from Asia. I'm also doing the showroom for Taiping on Place des Victoires, and that'll open up in January. And we are working now, I've done a lot of work with the champagne house called Ruinart, and now I'm working with a champagne house called Bicard Salmon, doing a visitors and tasting center for them in Mareuil-sur-Ailly. We've just finished a smaller, more residential project for them, which finishes on Friday. And then from there are 2 private residences that are underway, one in Maison, one in Paris.
And I wonder if the San Francisco community knows that you are a California Man,
Well,
you were originally
I
from
am.
Los Angeles, which is
I'm really from
yeah.
Los Angeles, but I am a Californian at heart still, and I do get up to San Francisco as much as possible. I have two very, very good friends that are there, two good family friends that are there, and so it's nice to get up as often as I can.
Well, we look forward to seeing you here next time when you're able to travel.
Yes.
Yes. And Jérôme, what are you working on at the moment at Maison?
Well, we're also very fortunate to be working on very exciting and diverse projects. The first one that comes to my mind is an amazing yacht that we've been working on actually for almost 2 years. Also, a beautiful palace in Moscow, designed by Studio Indigo out of London. Another palace in the Middle East, in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. So this is designed by actually a local design firm called NBA, extremely talented. And Studio Parisien that we mentioned earlier, extremely talented object designers, but also interior designers working on a lot of Cartier stores throughout the world, specifying their own designs, but also Charles designs.
Thank you so much. And we're so thrilled to have access to the work of both of your, access to both of your collections here in San Francisco. And, as you know, the community here is so incredibly expressive and creative. The custom capabilities associated with both of the houses will be a great joy because there's a huge value placed, as you know, on artisanship and craft in the Bay Area. So just to share with our audience, obviously, Elliott Barnes' collection called Poinciana for de Lille is available at Nid de Fauchères. And La Maison Charles is available through De Sousa Hughes. And typically this would be the week of Maison, with so many San Francisco designers travel to Paris for Maison et Objet. So we're having our own little virtual Maison et Objet with the both of you. So thank you so much, really, for taking the time